take down my monitor here and look into the camera up here. Then I just look at you on my monitor.
Welcome to Beyond Leadership, adopting a coaching mindset. In this series, our conversations aren't about biography or polished advice. They're about how decisions are made in the real world when the pressure is on. We'll anchor on one situation where the path wasn't obvious and explore what goes on in the mind of a leader when confronted with real trade-offs, imperfect information, and the need to move anyway. This podcast is brought to you by Peer Plaza. Human help, instantly. Brian Østergaard is an experienced project and digitalization leader specializing in cross-disciplinary collaboration and organizational development. Brian's strengths lie in bringing together professionals from diverse backgrounds to create dynamic and effective teams. He excels at leveraging individual strengths to create successful project outcomes. Welcome, Brian. Good to see you. For non-Danes, Brian is spelled Brian, but his name is actually Brian, so I'm going to call him Brian. When you're out and about, do people call you Brian or they call you Brian?
When I'm outside from Denmark, I call myself Brian. It's easier for everybody. Easier. Yeah. So in Denmark, I'm Brian, and outside Denmark, I'm Brian.
So Brian, tell me, let's set the scene and tell our listeners what situation we're walking into right now.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I have been excelling in different digitalization processes. And the last digitalization project I was involved in, which involved integrating new technologies, emerging technologies as virtual reality and 3D scanning into vocational education. I was asked by the management when I couldn't ensure that all the instructors, all the teachers had learned to use the technologies. My experience is that mandatory staff development on an afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m. leads to nothing else but a nice time.
So let me understand that better. So they were expecting you to bring them up to some high level of understanding of these technologies in that short time period. And how often do you have those meetings? Is it once a week that you get those 2 hours with them?
This was in the hiring process, and they wanted to know when I could ensure when the teachers and when the instructors had learned to use the technologies. And I can't ensure learning. I can't learn you anything. You have to do the hard work. You have to do the learning. But I wanted to lead the project, so I was in a little dilemma. They wanted a timeline.
Here's the constraint, as I understand it. The management team is asking you to guarantee that they're going to learn something.
Exactly.
And you're saying to them, hey, I can teach, I can offer them this information, but I can't guarantee that they're going to learn because it's up to them to learn.
Yeah, exactly. And they answered with, yeah, you just have to make a timeline. Yeah, sometimes you can't. If you have to build a car or ship, you can make a product line and maybe ensure to be finished in time. But with learning, it's another part because it's all about human. If it's mandatory to be at a course Thursday afternoon from 2 to 4 p.m., it's not necessarily the right time for you to learn. And if it doesn't make sense to use virtual reality, then it's very hard to learn. And virtual reality is a new technology in many parts, but especially in vocational education programs I have learned now.
Help us understand what virtual reality is.
If you get a pair of glasses on, you are fully immersed. You can see the real world, and then you turn on the power, and you get an immersive experience. You can visit places without being there. It can be very shocking to experience it the first time, and some get a little seasick when they are using the glasses. Yeah. So Ray-Ban has made some new glasses, but it's not virtual reality. It's more augmented reality or mixed reality. You can see the real world through the glasses, but in front, in the glasses, you can see text, you can see pictures. So that's another emerging technology we also have used.
Well, I've tried both of those technologies. Tried the Ray-Bans just recently, maybe 3 weeks ago. Very interesting. Of course, it takes some time to get used to that. It's change management, right? The full virtual reality, I remember also maybe 5 years ago, the first time I tried that in the Mobile World Congress here in Barcelona. And, you mentioned about getting dizzy. Wow. I think I was sick for a week after that. Just talking about virtual reality makes my head spin. I remember I was at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona some time ago. They put me in a simulator where I stood on a platform, gripping a bar, fully immersed in what felt like a four-dimensional roller coaster. Actually, it was a roller coaster. And it's striking how quickly the brain loses its grip on reality. The fear of falling from those dizzying heights feels completely real.
Yeah. And I have been into virtual reality and the other technology for a lot of years, and I have often seen companies show how extreme the experience can be, and they put them into an elevator and put them up on the 60th floor and walk the plank. And that confirm for a lot of people that they get sick with the virtual reality and they can't use it. So I'm doing something else. I'm introducing virtual reality with a game called Beat Saber. You have a red and a blue brick flying against you, and you have two sabers, a red and a blue saber, and you smash the blue and red bricks. So it's gaming, it's playing, and no one gets seasick.
Because they're focused, right? Yeah, that's exactly the trick, isn't it?
So they have a good experience and they find it interesting, and then they ask, how can I use it in my education? What's the next step in this?
Yeah, but I want to pull you back to that moment when you were speaking with management and you said, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do that. First of all, did you say that out loud? Did you say, no, I can't guarantee that? Or was that in an email? How did that happen?
It was at the interview in person.
At the interview, when they're hiring you?
Yeah, at the interview, when they were hiring me, there were three people from the management. And yeah, they were interested in my competences. I could sense that. But I could also sense that they wanted a timeline, as I said. They were familiar with waterfall methods, and I was uncertain if they were ready for an agile product management.
Think of waterfall and agile as two very different ways to manage projects, especially in tech. Waterfall is linear and structured. You define everything up front, then move step by step. Plan, design, build, test, launch. Each phase depends on the one before it. It works well when requirements are clear and unlikely to change, like constructing a building. Agile is flexible and iterative. Instead of one big plan, you work in short cycles, constantly testing, learning, and adjusting. You build a little, get feedback, improve, and repeat. It's better suited for environments where things change quickly, like software or startups. They're not opposites so much as different tools. Waterfall prioritizes predictability and control. Agile prioritizes adaptability and speed. Many teams today blend both, using structure where needed and flexibility where it matters.
But I chose to say that as a matter of principle, I can't ensure anything, and certainly not learning.
Was there any hesitation before saying that? I mean, your job was on the line, and we all know that getting to the interview is very difficult in most cases. And so there you were. Do you have a wife and kids?
Yeah, and a house, purchases.
Right? Yeah. And a mortgage, and everybody's counting on you, and you say, no.
Yeah, I did.
Call me biased, but I tend to associate this kind of frankness in interviews with Danes, and more broadly with Northern Europeans, as well as Midwesterners in the U.S. It's less about pushing back against bureaucracy and more about standing firmly behind your values.
It was a 4-year project, so I knew that there was time to make mistakes. We learn more from mistakes than we actually think we do. So I knew that we could do something good. So after I said no, I told them that the probability will increase but I can't ensure it. And here, 4 years later, we haven't given time for the instructors to learn how to use the technologies, but the instructors, the teachers, has taken their own time to learn to use the technologies. It's 3D printing, it's 3D scan, it's virtual reality, it's laser cutting, it's a lot of the different technologies, but we had the time to experiment and let it grow from down on. So it was bottom up and not top down.
What do you think made it possible for them to attain interest in that? What inspired them?
The more I know, the more I know that I don't know. And I'm not a bricklayer, I'm not a welder, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a painter. And that's the educations that I was involved in this project.
So your audience, they were laborers. They were people who don't use a lot of the visual technologies. Are they now applying any of these technologies in their businesses?
Yeah, they are. And the students in Denmark, the students in vocational education, they attend to school and then they go out in a workplace and they come back to school, and it's a combination of school and working. And they are taking their companies back to school and show them how this 3D printing or robotics can change the production line in the companies where they are students. So the students are taking the technologies into the small and medium companies.
We'll continue our conversation with Brian Østegård right after this short message from Peer Plaza.
Ever wish you could just talk to someone who's been where you are? Not a chatbot, not ChatGPT or Gemini. A real human who gets it. That's Peer Plaza. Human help. Instantly. Whether you need a career coach, a leadership mentor, or someone to help you navigate a tough transition, Peer Plaza connects you with vetted professionals ready to help right now. Browse profiles, watch intro videos, and book a session. Just like that. Visit peerplaza.com, because the best advice still comes from real people. So you're planting little seeds, exactly. And those seeds are flying away into the different companies. And
I don't know which seeds will grow. So I'm planting a lot of seeds. And you mentioned change management. I don't know if it's the right word, because we don't change, we develop. And we don't manage, we lead. So I don't think that it's change management that I'm doing, trying to lead development.
Upgrade accepted. When we spoke last, you talked about digitalization is 80% people. What does that change about how you lead a project?
If you don't understand the technology, it can't become a tool. And if the technology can't become a tool, it's not interesting. A tool is something that can make something faster, better, or something you couldn't do before. And I've met a lot of people that get excited about the new technologies. We have to use robots, but we don't know how to use them, so they are just standing in a corner after we have bought them. But if we learn the basics of the technologies, then we can transform it into a tool that can change how we produce products.
It sounds like grounding them in the basics is one of your principles, to make sure they understand the most basic things, and from there they will generate enough interest, but they need some sort of an anchoring point, and then they'll fly. Is that how it works?
Yeah, They are experts in what they can use the technologies for. I don't know how they can use the technology, but I can show them the basics and coach them to get inspired to want to learn more. And a collaborative robot is nothing else like, this is called a painting roll. It's called that when you paint the walls?
A roller.
A roller, yeah. That's also a technology. And actually one of the teachers came to me after a year and she was thinking when she was a student and this smart salesman came with this new technology and her boss said that we can't use that because we don't paint the right way if we use a roller. And she was thinking that was just the same when she was introduced to 3D printing. She said, we can't use 3D printing. I'm a painter. I'm painting walls. I can't use a 3D printer. But after a year, she had tried the technology and learned what it could. And then she became a lot and made a lot of 3D printing. We haven't given any time for the teachers to mandatory training in the technologies. But they have all been in the 300 square meter joint workshop with free access to technologies and materials for students and teachers. It's a playground where everybody can experiment. When we have 8 3D printers standing in the same room, there's always something you can get inspired from.
Oh, that's great. What are the ages that you generally work with?
From 18 to 60.
Okay, so it's a really wide range of people.
Yeah, it is.
What is the interaction like between the younger people and the elder people?
The educators has to learn a new way to teach because they are used to be experts. They are used to know everything. But with technologies and digitalization, you can't know everything. So you have to learn to let go from the education.
It's changed, hasn't it? Teachers now, and this really coincides with my thinking about the future of education. We don't really need teachers anymore. We need coaches.
Yeah, exactly.
The facts we can find out. If we don't know something, we'll just ask ChatGPT or one of these other technologies. We just don't need the facts anymore. It's all around us. What we need are people who inspire us and people who help us when we get stuck.
Exactly. Facilitators, coaches, motivators. The instruction part is in this our joint workshop. We have it's QR codes with one-take videos that does the instruction. When you come to you want to introduce your students to laser cutting, and maybe it's a half year since you've been using the laser cutter last. Then you can't remember how it works. So the teachers themselves have made small videos, one takes QR codes, and then the students just watch the videos. And as you mentioned, the teachers are now coaches. They are encouraging the students to try to make errors and learn from the errors and be a guide more than instructor. And that can be tough to learn for a teacher. And I think it's the same in companies. This is just in education, but I think it's the same in companies. Sometimes you have a new strategy and you put them out on the homepage, and then now you have implemented a new strategy, but it's not integrated in the daily time. So this difference between implementation and integration is also a focus. I've been asked a lot of time over the 4 years that have passed now when I think the project will be integrated in the education, and I tend to say it has been from day one.
Yeah, the role has changed, and it's simply acknowledging the role, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you have to learn to do the instruction in a new way.
I know from my own experience with the interns that we bring in, there's an expectation that we're going to teach them things, and they ask questions. So how do you do this? And I say, I haven't got a clue. Go and figure it out. Right? And they look at me as if, well, why did we come here if you're not going to teach us? And, slowly they learn that they came here to have the freedom to learn. And that's so important to me that it's not going to come from me. It's going to come from them figuring things out. And if I think about my childhood and probably your childhood, I don't know if you were the guy that took apart their TV set, but I certainly was. And I did things like that. And I think, we're missing a lot of that. And now, this is an opportunity for learning how to learn.
Exactly. And that's also necessary for organizations to learn. It's not only on individuals that has to learn. Also, organizations has to learn. Organization has to adapt faster to changes, generations change, technology change, political things change. So organizations has to learn to learn.
Well, this ties in very well with what you were speaking about earlier with waterfall versus agile. And, when we think about the older organizational method of teaching one and writing it down in a book and sending that book out to everybody to learn, there's no time for that anymore.
No, but you also have to have some basic skills to see if AI is telling you the truth. It's just like a calculator. In good old days, the calculator couldn't calculate the right thing because it wasn't so advanced. So you have to have some basic knowledge to navigate in digitalization processes. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add today that maybe I've left out that is important for you to get out in this?
A lot of people ask me also, how should they do what I have done? And I say that they have to have self-awareness. When I was younger, I knew that I was right. All life was easier. I knew I was right. Now I know I'm often not right. So you have to have self-awareness. And then you have to, I don't know what it's called, but maybe it's called self-discipline. You have to learn to sit on your hands. You have to give space for organizations, co-workers, employees, students to make their own reflections, get hurt on the learning, make mistakes. Maybe you know what's the right way to program collaborative robot is, but if you tell this to an employee, they don't learn it. They have to do their own mistakes. They have to do the hard way. So you have to sit on your hands. So self-awareness and self-discipline. So learn how to sit on your hands, and empathy. It's organizational change development is 80% people, and when it's digitalization, it's 80% human and 20% technology. So you have to have empathy. The humans you're working with. The technologies is secondary.
It's so interesting to hear you say that, because pretty much everything you mentioned are considered soft skills.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not the so-called hard skills, the technical skills. It's really being human, something that we're almost endangered of losing these days. But it sounds like what you're saying is, if you understand these qualities and understand how important these skills are, then you can enable people to grow. And if not, you'll stunt their growth. And when you said sitting on your hands, in coaching, I call that silence. I call that shutting up.
Yeah. Maybe you have something you think is the right way to do it, but maybe it's not. And people have to learn it themselves. So yeah, you have to shut up.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's really, yeah.
I think it's harder in the beginning. But I think what we find out is that when we get better at it, it blossoms, doesn't it? All of a sudden you realize, wow, what power that is to just let somebody go and let them figure it out without you interjecting all the time. There's so much good in that. It's interesting because in music, silence is an important part as well. Silence produces so much for us, and we rarely get enough of it. First of all, you have to have silence. You have to have silence before a piece begins and silence when a piece ends, although today they kind of blend in with each other, don't they? Which is also something to think about. So the same thing with film today. You watch something on Netflix, before the credits are over, you're watching the next film, right? And there are plenty of commercial reasons for that. But it does create something that is disturbing in our society that we're not really clear on yet. But that's a story for another day.
I've lost count of how many podcast conversations have circled back to the same advice. Sit on your hands. Listen louder. Or, when necessary, shut the fuck up. What stood out in my conversation with Brian was a simple shift. Let people learn through curiosity rather than forcing them through a course. When interest leads, learning tends to stick. No one forces kids to figure out an iPhone. They explore, experiment, and teach themselves. The question is, why treat other skills so differently? We spend too much time focusing on what the company needs and not enough on what the learning actually adds to someone's life. A bricklayer, a painter, a real person trying to do their job a little better, a little faster, with a bit more pride in the result.
Wow, Brian, thank you so much for everything today. I think we learned so much from your way of thinking and working. Is there any last word that you'd like to add before we take off for today?
No, I'm not an expert. I'm just human.
Thank you very much, Brian. Great to see you. All the best.
Likewise.
I want to thank you, Brian Østegård, for being my guest on this week's podcast, my team at Scale U, and thank you for listening. If you're getting value from these conversations, make sure you follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It helps more thoughtful leaders to find the show. And if one episode stands out, share it with someone who's in the middle of a real decision. That's where these conversations tend to matter most. I'm Executive Coach Michael Hoffman. See you in the next one.